Here is a guide to free-to-play healing gear in Wizard101 for levels 100 through 170. All of the gear in this video can be farmed or crafted, so you don't need to open any packs or buy a gift card. This video is organized by level range and then by items in your backpack. I go through them in the order they are shown at the top of your backpack window in-game. Here are the timestamps for every item, so if you're looking for something in particular, you can jump to it. Now let's get into the gear. Starting at level 100, you can craft a great hat, robe, and set of boots in Chrysalis. Zelisa the Snooping One in Sardonyx sells the recipes. These recipes follow the new crafting model that King Vial has introduced, where pieces of other gear are part of the recipe. Usually they're available in the bazaar, which makes things easier. The hat is the Mantis Cover of Readiness with the pin sockets. The way you get outgoing healing from this hat is with a shield pin. You can craft this life shield pin you see here, which gives you 19% outgoing healing, and the great thing about pins is that they don't shatter when you take them off the gear, so you can reuse this pin as many times as you want. In addition, this hat gives 8% pip chance, 7% universal resist, and both life critical and universal critical block. The robe is the Mouse Aegis of Persistence. It gives 14% universal resist and some critical and block. In addition to the 6% life accuracy, this power pin socket allows you to add accuracy for another school. I typically use a balance accuracy pin since I cast a lot of elemental or spiritual blades, but you could also socket a death accuracy pin for casting feints. The boots are the Leaf Shield Stompers of Vigor. These give 9% resist and 8% pip chance along with another power pin socket, but unfortunately there isn't a shield pin for outgoing healing. If you want a robe and set of boots that do have outgoing healing, I suggest a couple pieces from Tartarus, the level 90 dungeon, and Aquila. The robe is Zeus's War Eagle Raiment. Here is the side-by-side comparison with the Chrysalis robe I mentioned, where you can see that the main differences between them are the amount of resist, power pip chance, and the pins, because none of the older Aquila gear has pins. The boots alternative is the Footgear of the Afterlife. It has slightly less resist, but you do gain 10% outgoing healing. Both the boots and the robe are dropped by the final boss of Tartarus, Hades the Unseen. All of the Tartarus gear is now craftable too with the new Aquila Chronicle update. To get the recipes, you talk to Kalkos Coppersmith right next to the Mount Olympus entrance. However, this gear has a badge requirement before you can craft it. To get the badge, you have to defeat Hades 20 times, and that is time consuming because it's a long dungeon. For a wand, I recommend the Sword of Kings. It has 25% outgoing healing and some universal critical rating. It is automatically rewarded when you finish the final dungeon of Avalon. Believe it or not, you can actually still use this wand at max level 170 because it's one of the highest outgoing healing wands in the game. It's a staple of healing gear and a great option if you don't want to invest time into getting another wand. Moving on to the Athame, I recommend the Spirit of Darkmoor's Thorn. This is one of the best healing Athames and an investment piece because you will probably wear this for 60 levels or so. It has 12% outgoing healing and 16% power pip chance. It has 1 tier, 2 circle, and 1 triangle jewel sockets. This is the best combination of sockets on an Athame in my opinion because you have a health jewel with the tier, either more outgoing healing or critical jewels with the circle, and an accuracy or power pip chance jewel with the triangle. This Athame is dropped by Yevengey Nightcreeper, who is the first boss in the Darkmoor Graveyard dungeon. You could also use Blade of the Felled Titan, which is a level 90 plus Athame. The stats are pretty equivalent to Spirit of Darkmoor, where you swap 5% more outgoing healing in exchange for a circle socket. Blade of the Felled Titan drops from the secret boss in Tartarus named Cronus. In my experience, the drop rate is low, but it's worth mentioning if you don't want to farm Darkmoor or you'd rather have an Athame that doesn't require an extra circle slot to fill. A craftable alternative is the Cosmic Kris. This is a level 58 Athame that you can craft in Celestia, but it is also auctionable, so you can buy it from the bazaar if you see it. It gives 16% power pip chance and 20% outgoing healing, but only 1 tier and 1 circle socket. I personally use this while I was farming from my level 100 Athame as it's pretty easy to craft. One option that I don't recommend is the Wolf's Emerald Talon. At first glance, it seems great that you can get 25% both incoming and outgoing healing, but it doesn't give any health or power pip chance. I don't think this Athame is really practical to wear since you lose those important stats. It is something you could use if you wanted to maximize your outgoing healing, like if you're trying to get your Elixir Vitae badge, but I wouldn't wear it while supporting a team because there are better, more well-rounded options. There are many different options for an amulet. I personally pick an amulet either for the item card or the resist, whichever one is more important for your playstyle. If you're looking for an amulet that gives a healing buff item card, I recommend either Izft's Vial of Restoration or Jewel of the Virtuous Soul. They both give 2% outgoing healing and a Guiding Light item card. Vial of Restoration has 1 tier and 1 square slot, and Virtuous Soul has 2 square slots. Both of them drop from the lower Zigzag dungeon in Krakatopia, and that is a level 60 plus dungeon. Jewel of the Virtuous Soul is the better one between the two, as it also gives a rebirth item card, but it is harder to get. That's because it's a drop from the locked chest in lower Zigzag, and you need a wooden skeleton key to unlock the chest. Vial of Restoration drops from a regular boss named Majoris. He's halfway through the dungeon. If you want an amulet with resist instead, I recommend either Jewel of the Shadow Web or Spirit of Darkmoor's Jewel. Shadow Web has 6% universal resist and 1 tier and 1 square socket. You can craft it from the same chrysalis vendor as the gear I previously mentioned, Zelisa the Snooping One. The Spirit of Darkmoor's Jewel has 4% universal resist and 2 square sockets. It also has a Cycle of Life item card. You can get it from Shane Von Shane in the Darkmoor Upper Halls dungeon. For a ring, you want hands down the Stone of the Other Side. This is like the one healing ring to rule them all. I still use it on my max healing setup with my Crown's gear. It gives 33% outgoing healing along with 12% power pip chance. It has 1 tier, 1 circle, and 1 square jewel socket. You can get this ring from many different bosses in Avalon, and it is level 78 plus. For a deck, I recommend one that has a triangle jewel socket and gives you an additional pip. You can craft one from Darkmoor called Tatyana's Deck of Salvation. You get the recipe from Harker, who is on the left-hand side of the Castle Darkmoor dungeon. You could also use the deck of the Shadow Heart, which drops from a few bosses in Chrysalis, including Morganth. Moving on to levels 110 through 30. I grouped these levels together because there isn't a lot of change between them. One reason why is because the options for a hat with outgoing healing just dry up. To the best of my knowledge, there's only one free-to-play option between the level 100 Chrysalis crafted hat until level 132 with the Survivor Hood hats from Caramel, and that is the Jade Hood of Mystery. The Jade set of hats, boots, and robe are available by farming the Lore Magus boss in Dragonspire, who is a gold skeleton key boss, and this gear was originally crowns only. I'm not the biggest fan of saying something is free to play as long as you're willing to farm an especially difficult boss for it, and because skeleton keys are one-time use. I personally found Lore Magus difficult to farm at level 110-ish because she doesn't allow you to use spells of your own school, meaning that life doesn't have a lot of healing options and it would require you to have a secondary school to be able to hit. With the meta right now of not training for a secondary school and really just spreading your training points around for different utility spells, this is hard to do. Jade gear is famous for being the best all-school tank gear in the game, and if you really wanted maximum resist on your gear, you could go for the hat, but I personally don't recommend it. So other than Jade, you go 30 levels with no hat options, and then the caramel hats aren't even worth using. Unfortunately, it won't be until level 160 that we finally get a quality replacement hat. I hope that in the future, King's Isle adds more craftable hats with shield pins in the level 110 through 150 range. For the robe, there are a few options. The Majoris Armor of Impulse has great outgoing healing at 27%, although resist is a little low at 8%. It's dropped by the final boss of Polaris, the Rat. The Titan Warrior Wrap of Mettle is a slight downgrade with 25% outgoing healing, but the same resist. It's dropped by multiple other Polaris bosses who are easier to farm. However, neither of these robes give power pip chance. If you're willing to wait until level 125, you could craft the Lofty Alphoi Surcoat in Imperia. It has more well-rounded stats. Outgoing healing is lower at 15%, but you get about 500 more health points, 5% more resist, and 10% power pip chance. You can get the recipe from Liligo and Aerial Shores. For your boots, I recommend the Vanguard's Vibrant Boots. It's true that it's not worth farming catacombs for damage gear anymore, however, these boots are really the best free-to-play option in this level range for healing. You get more than double the amount of health points compared to the level 100 boots, 14% resist, and some outgoing healing at 6%. None of the Catacombs gear has pins, unfortunately, but you do get this sharpened blade item card, which is very useful. The Vanguard boots drop from Prince Vigor, and you can also craft them. You get the recipe from Zasha Emberforge. Both of them are located in the first zone of the Catacombs. If you want to upgrade your wand, you have a couple options. The first is the Root of Spring. This is a unique wand because it has the May Cast Rebirth ability. If you cast the Brilliant Light item card that comes with the wand, there is a good chance that the wand will cast Rebirth right afterwards. If you're wearing gear with good outgoing healing, this is pretty powerful and makes it easier to continuously heal your team. To get this wand, you must craft it, and you can get the recipe from Azalea the Armsmaster and Chrysalis, who's conveniently right next to Zelisa the Snooping One. However, be aware that this wand is no trade, so you cannot craft it on one wizard and then send it through the shared bank to another. Your other wand option is the Emerald Cayman Scepter. It drops from the Gold Skeleton Key Boss Ixex's Cursed Wing. Technically, this is Crown's gear because it comes from the Spelemental Skyvern pack, but you can get it for free from farming the boss. I do actually recommend farming Ixex because she's easy to one-shot with an AoE, and I have seen the wand drop myself a couple of times. Note that it says level 130 plus here because level 130 is the highest level version of this wand. These are the best stats that you can get. It's basically an upgraded version of the Sword of King's wand, but I think it becomes most useful once you reach level 170, and you can add an 8% outgoing square jewel to the socket, getting you to a total of 28% outgoing healing. But that's a little bit down the line, and using Sword of Kings until you hit level 170 works just as well. You can find Ixax in 3 points Azteca. I don't recommend any upgrades to your theme at this level range other than updating your jewels. For the amulet, there are a couple of options from Polaris that have high resist. They are Rasputin's Charm of Exertion and the Arcanum Exile Amulet of Vim. Notably, these both have the same resist as Jewel of the Shadow Web. Rasputin's Charm has an extra square socket, but that's the only main difference between these two. You can get either of them from the Rat, and a few other bosses drop the Arcanum Amulet as well. If you wanted a Balance Mastery Amulet instead, you could get the Divine Paradox Amulet. This can be useful if you're playing more of a support role by blading your hitter, casting reshuffles, or using other balance spells. The Paradox Amulets drop from the Rat, in the Spirit Grove, and the final area of Imperia. I don't recommend any upgrades to your ring other than updating the jewels as you continue to level. Decks with a triangle socket and an extra pip will not be available in the Bazaar until past level 120. You will get the Lively Liaisons deck automatically once you finish Imperia as part of the General Liaison gear set, which is at level 130. It is hard to find decks that also have critical rating, but if crit doesn't matter that much to you, you can get the Interstellar's Medic deck in the Bazaar at level 122, which has pip conversion instead. If you do want to get a level 110 deck, you could get Rasputin's deck of Fortitude from the Rat and Polaris. Now for gear for levels 140 through 50. Like I said before, there are no options for a better hat until level 160, so you can keep whatever you're currently using. However, there is an upgraded Life Mending pin which you can get at level 140, which gives you 27% outgoing healing. This pin is available in the Bazaar too, so if you're still using your Chrysalis hat, you can now increase your outgoing healing with a new pin. If you find yourself in need of more resist on your hat instead, you can just use your Malistaire one, or if you pick up a better hat along the way. Unfortunately, hats in the Bazaar from Arc 3 forward do not give resist, just like robes in the Bazaar do not give damage. For your robe and boots, I recommend either a set from Caramel or a set from Lemuria. The Caramel gear is called Sweetsmith, and there are 3 different versions: Guten, Wunderbar, and Uber. There's minor differences between the 3, but Uber is the best version. It's like an upgraded Lofty Alphoi Surcoat, with 13% pip chance, 18% universal resist, and 19% outgoing healing. You can get all 3 variants of the Sweetsmith smock from the final boss of Caramel, the Aberrant Paradox. The Sweetsmith boots are almost the exact same as the Vanguard ones, with a little bit of a downgrade in outgoing healing. Here you can see the Wunderbar Sweetsmith boots compared to the Vanguard's Vibrant boots. You can get all 3 variants of the Sweetsmith boots from the Oogie Boogie fight in Goblerton Caramel. The Lemuria robe and boots are part of the Malevolent Life set. Both of them are available in the Bazaar, which is great and saves you a lot of time. If you haven't upgraded from your level 100 gear, now is the time. You get significantly more health from the higher level robe, and you will notice the difference. The Malevolent Life boots aren't a major upgrade to the Vanguard or Caramel ones, so again, you could skip if you already have either of those. Here are all 3 side by side for comparison. You can see that the theme for levels 130 through 150 is that the robe and boots are modest upgrades as you go up, so it's not necessary to farm for new ones at each level tier. My personal recommendation is to craft the lofty Alphoi Surcoat at 125 and then wait to get the malevolent robe since it doesn't require farming. For the boots, I think farming the Oogie Boogies will definitely be faster than trying to get the Vanguard boots. However, you don't get to the Oogie Boogies until the last 15 quests or so of Caramel. At that point, if you've been doing side quests, you might already be at level 150 and could just buy the malevolent boots. I definitely prefer to fight the Oogie Boogies over Vigor. However, if you really want boots at level 130, you can farm the Abandoned House dungeon during Double Reagents weekend. I think Abandoned House drops like 10 alchemical extract per run, with a chance at salts and crystals too, so if you do that during Double Reagents, you could be done in a day or so. For your wand, at this point you might consider switching from the Root of Spring because the healing cheats do ramp up in Arc 4. The Sword of Kings or Emerald Cayman Scepter both work. I don't think you need to change your theme at this level besides updating the jewels. Note that at level 155, you can get the circle jewels with the highest outgoing healing at 8%. If you want an updated amulet, I suggest either the Uber Candymancer rope or the Malevolent Life Talisman. I think Caramel has some of the best amulets in the game, and I like this one for the 5% resist and the Protected Bladestorm item card, which can be very useful. It also has one tier and one square socket. The Malevolent Life Talisman gives you a great resist upgrade at 8% and has 2 square sockets. It is also available in the Bazaar, which is nice. Amulet is always up to preference, however, and I find that I change mine depending on the strategy for a fight. Finally, there are more options in the Bazaar for your deck. If you haven't upgraded from your level 100 one, I recommend the Supreme Jungle deck, available at level 148. However, if you don't want a replacement right now, it doesn't really matter because better ones will soon be available. Now for the final tier, levels 160 through 170. I prefer to use the Eternal Inspired gear, which comes from Novus. It is the defensive version of the Inspired Aeon gear, which is for damage. You get the Eternal gear by trading in your Aeon gear, and it is a 1-to-1 exchange. You visit the Novus gear crafter Luis Guriel Altuve to do this. He is located in Canadas at the bottom of the hill. You have the option to either farm for the Aeon gear, which drops from a few different bosses in Novus, or you can craft the Aeon gear and then convert it to the Eternal gear. Crafting Aeon is the same process as the Chrysalis gear. I had to craft them because I found the drop rates to be too low for me, and unfortunately it is a grind for the Pixos reagents that you need. The best time to do this is Double Reagents weekend, like if you are going to craft the Vanguard boots. We finally have an upgrade for your hat, the Eternal Inspired Helm. You will notice a big difference with these well-rounded stats, with over 1,000 health points, 10% power pip chance, 7% life accuracy, critical and critical block, and 13% resist. Best of all is the Life Mending pin with its level 160 plus version, which gives you 29% outgoing healing. Unfortunately, this pin is drop only. You can get it from Dasein Duelist and Novus, or if you're willing to wait until the next Worlds, Wallaroo and Selenopolis, you can get it as a drop or craft it. It is only a 2% increase from the level 140 pin. For the robe, I recommend staying with the Malevolent Life Cloak if you prioritize outgoing healing and resist, or the Eternal Inspired Cape if you want more health points and power pins. For the boots, I recommend the Eternal Inspired boots, and you get another shield pin and another power pin, which is great. I will note that there is a level 170 alternative gear set called the Bold Dream Stalker set. It is the defensive version of the Bold Dream Reaver set, so it follows the same model as the Novus gear. I personally do not use the Stalker set for my hat, robe, or boots because I don't think the minor improvements you get from the gear are worth the grind. They all drop from the same dungeon called Nightmare. This dungeon is the most complicated dungeon in the game currently, and a single run takes around 45 minutes to an hour, assuming everything goes well. It has a much higher barrier of knowledge than the Novus bosses, and it also requires more reagents to craft if you don't get them through drops. You can see it requires 80 Dream Water versus the 67 pixels you need for Eternal. It is a lot easier to casually farm for the Eternal gear, and I think it's a less frustrating experience than dealing with Nightmare. That being said, you can still use the Stalker set if you have it, but it's not necessary to put yourself through the extra work when Eternal gear is available. This is also because typically if you're going to get the Reaver set, you want to wear that as your damage gear, and if you do already have Aeon that you're wearing for your damage gear, you can simply convert that to Eternal and then be done. I will also note that the level 170 gear that drops from the Selenopolis bosses have the same stats as the Wallaroo gear. The Selenopolis gear is called Avatar, and it is spread out across several more bosses who are easier to farm. Both sets are identical except for the item cards. For the rest of the level 170 gear I discussed that comes from Wallaroo, you could absolutely get the corresponding gear from Selenopolis. You can look up the bosses on the wiki and decide which ones you prefer to farm for your accessories, in other words, your amulet, a theme, and deck, since those are the ones from the Stalker set that I use. For the wand, I would choose the Emerald Cayman Scepter once you reach level 170 because you can socket the 8% outgoing square jewels and surpass Sword of Kings and outgoing healing amount. I really don't use my Root of Spring wand at this point because of the Maycast, and its outgoing healing is only 15%, and you can get the 28% with the Emerald Cayman. For the theme, I recommend the Bold Dream Stalker Knife. We finally have an upgrade to the level 100 ones. The biggest difference is the increase in health with about 1,000 health points more. You also swap a circle socket for a square socket. Like I said before, you will need to get a Bold Dream Reaver knife and then convert it to the Stalker version. The Reaver knife drops from the final bosses of Wallaroo, the Naval Fleet. However, that fight is located in Doom Moon on Novus. The Wallaroo and Selenopolis bosses have the badge crafting requirements like I mentioned before for the Tartarus gear. For the Naval Fleets, you have to defeat them 15 times to earn the badge. The good news is that this fight is incredibly easy, so you can casually farm for it, and you could definitely get the badge in less than a day. Also, you do not need the badge to convert your theme to the Stalker version. If you receive the Reaver knife as a drop, you can immediately convert it by talking to the gear crafter who appears once you defeat the bosses. For your amulet, at level 160, you could use the Eternal Inspired Charm. It has 8% resist and 2 square sockets. The Aeon charm that you need first drops from Dasein Duelist and Novus, who again drops the 29% outgoing pin, so you could kill 2 birds with 1 stone. However, it's not essential to do this because you do get an equivalent option at level 170 with the Bold Dream Stalker Amulet. The difference is swapping a square socket for a triangle socket. The Stalker Amulet is even easier to farm than the Athame, and is definitely easier to get than the Eternal Inspired Charm. The Reaver version of the amulet drops from Crash the Bandicoot. He is an extremely popular boss to farm, and you can kill him in 2 rounds. You will see a lot of people farming him for Dreamwater. You need to defeat Crash 20 times in order to get the badge and craft the Reaver amulet, but it is even quicker than the Naval Fleets. You could do this in a couple hours. Again, you don't need a badge to convert from Reaver to Stalker, you need the badge specifically to craft Reaver. I also want to mention that at levels 160 through 70, often the most important part of your amulet is the item card instead of the resist. For example, if you're fighting a boss that requires a specific card like Shatter All, most of the time you can get it from an amulet because amulets are very quick to swap out. I personally wear Jewel of the Apiary because I find that I'm usually on both support and healing duty. There are a bunch of amulets in the bazaar that have blade-related cards with square sockets, and you can put 8% outgoing healing or the 775 health jewels in them. For your ring, you don't need to replace the stone of the other side, just take advantage of being able to fill the square socket with an outgoing healing jewel. For your deck, once you hit 170, I actually recommend switching to one with a square socket instead. If you choose to use the Stalker Amulet, you will already get a second triangle socket, and truthfully, I think you only really need one. The Bold Dream Stalker deck has a square socket, but if you do prefer a blade item card, you could use the Bold Dream Reaver deck instead, which gives you this Star Blade card with a circle socket. A Star Blade is always useful if you're buffing a storm hitter. Both of these decks drop from Mr. Montgomery in Doom Moon and Novus. There's also a badge requirement to craft the Reaver deck. You get it when you defeat Montgomery 10 times. Now that I've shown you all of your gear options, I want to talk about the other parts of the healing set that are just as important, which is your pet and the jewels you choose to socket onto your gear. Pets can be used at any level, and you can customize them to fit your playstyle and supplement your gear stats. Here are some common talents for healing pets and some common pet bodies. You typically see 4 kinds of talents on a healing pet: outgoing healing, resist, maycast, and selfish talents. Outgoing healing and resist are what they sound like. Often you will see pets that have both outgoing healing talents called Healer and Medic, and both universal resist talents, Spell Defying and Spell Proof. Maycast talents are an ability for pets to possibly interrupt cast a spell. There are all different kinds, whether it's healing spells like Unicorn or Fairy, utility spells like Enfeeble or Cleanse Ward, or auras like Brace or Cycle of Life. You can think of it as a form of minion spells, basically. Maycasts can be super useful, but they aren't reliable, and they can trigger healing cheats or accidentally use up your healing buffs. Personally, I think Maycasts are great for lower levels where healing cheats aren't really common, but once you get to the more endgame bosses, particularly in Arc 4, I generally don't use my Maycast pet unless I know there isn't a cheat. Finally, many healing pets have what's called a selfish talent, meaning a talent that boosts your pet's stats. The goal is to have a pet with maximum stats and then manifest a selfish talent to boost those stats even more. Stats, importantly, are different from talents. Your pet stats affect the percentage of whatever stats apply to your gear. By having a selfish talent, you can get more outgoing healing or resist from your pet's talents, like going from Medic's maximum 8% without a selfish talent to 9% with a selfish talent. It's the same with Spell Proof, for example, which can go from 10% to 11%. Usually you see either Mighty or Cautious as selfish talents on a pet. Here you can see my perfect healing pet, which has 2 outgoing, 2 resist, and the selfish talent Mighty. Because Shadow has basically all but perfect stats and then manifested Mighty, it boosted the percentages of his talents. In total, Shadow gives me an extra 13% outgoing and 17% universal resist, which is great because this allows you to kind of fill in the gaps in your gear with a pet that can be swapped to any gear that you have. If you want a Maycast pet and are looking at options in the hatchmaking kiosk, you will probably see pets that have this Willcast Frozen Kraken talent. That's because Maycast pets are used for Decathlon, where it's helpful to have this extra Frozen Kraken card from your pet to cast. You can ignore that though since you won't need it. Now for common healing pet bodies. In the kiosk you'll find several different ones, depending on whether you want item cards specifically for healing or for supporting your team's hitter. For healing, the Dryad is a popular choice, along with the Copper Colossus. If you want a Pigsy item card, you could use the Ironic Crocomummy pet. For supporting your hitter, there's the Gobbler Ball, which gives you 2 blades, the Enchanted Armament, which gives you 3 sharpened blades, and the Clamoring Gulcher, which is specifically used for raids to support a storm hitter. I will also mention that you don't have to pay crowns to get a crowns-only pet. If a pet isn't available in the kiosk for all players to hatch with, you can hatch one-on-one with somebody who does have the pet you want. A popular crowns-only healing pet is the Leaffoot, which gives you 3 healing buffs. However, you pay regular gold to hatch with it like you would for a non-crowns pet. Here you can see a hatch with the Leaffoot and a Kookaburra, which is a non-crowns pet. The other important addition to your healing gear comes from jewels. The kinds of jewels you can get changes as you increase in level, and you heard me mention several different ones as I was going over the gear. Tier jewels give you extra health, however you can't buy them in the bazaar. You either buy them from jewel vendors in different worlds or you get them as drops. Circle jewels are for critical rating or outgoing healing. The amount of outgoing you can get increases as you level. At level 95 you can get 5%, then 6%, 7%, and then finally 8% at level 155 plus. Critical circle jewels are available in the bazaar, but outgoing healing are drop only. They're also notoriously hard to get. If you want the 8% outgoing ones, I recommend farming Lord Very Tall in Wallaroo. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing if you're using your circle slots for critical rating, if you can't get your hands on some outgoing healing ones. If maximizing your outgoing healing is most important to you, then you'll want to farm for them, but you can also get them gradually as you have time. Square sockets are for flat resist, and generally people socket either storm or universal resist ones. Universal resist are not available in the bazaar, but school-specific ones are. There are also some incoming healing square sockets, which you can get in the bazaar. Once you get to level 170, like I mentioned before, you can get square jewels that give 8% outgoing healing. These drop from Wallaroo or Selenopolis bosses, and you can also craft them using the same reagents that you use to craft your gear. Since they give the 8% outgoing amount, the current highest for jewels, I switch my flat resist jewels to these instead, unless you're raiding. Health jewels are available at level 170 as well, and the highest ones are the 775 health for life wizards. Finally, I use my triangle jewel sockets for either accuracy or power pip chance. You can get school accuracy ones in the bazaar, but following the same pattern, most universal accuracy jewels are drop only. You can also find pip chance jewels in the bazaar up to 9%. The 10% pip chance ones are either drop only or crafted in Wallaroo or Selenopolis. Now I'm going to show you what the 170 gear looks like all together so you can get an idea of what your final stats could potentially be. I'm wearing the Eternal Inspired hat with the 160 life mending pin. Here is the Malevolent Life cloak. For the boots, these are the same stats as the Eternal Inspired boots. It just has a different name because you can get the Eternal gear from the Novus Explorers pack, and I was lazy and just chose to buy some packs instead of crafting the boots like I did with the hat. It has another mending pin and a balance accuracy pin. The wand is the Sword of Kings. Unfortunately, I don't personally have the Emerald Cayman Scepter, just because I use a Crown's wand instead. Here is the Bouldering Stalker knife with the outgoing healing jewels. I forgot to mention earlier that at level 170 you can get item card tier jewels. I have the Potent Trap item card. Again, they're dropped or crafted in Wallaroo or Selenopolis. I'm also using a Power Pip Chance triangle jewel, but that's only because the Crown's robe I wear has lower Power Pip Chance and I needed the jewel for the boost. For the amulet, I can show you a couple different ones. I have the Eternal Inspired amulet with 2 health jewels on it since I use this amulet on a tank set, and here is the Jewel of the Apiary that has the outgoing healing jewels and the blade item cards. This is the amulet that I usually wear. I have my ring, the Stone of the Other Side, with the outgoing healing jewels. I'm using my same pet Shadow with the double resist, double outgoing healing, and mighty, and I like this Dark Pact item card too. For my deck, this is actually the Selenopolis version of the Bold Dream Stalker deck. It has the square socket and I think slightly more health, but it doesn't make a difference. Looking at all the stats together, you can see that this is genuinely a good gear set. You'll get anywhere between 11,000 to 13,000 health, mid-60s to lower 70s resist. Here accuracy is a little low because I don't have the triangle accuracy jewel, but if you use that, it's an extra 15% accuracy, so you'd get 27% life accuracy. Critical is a little low, unfortunately, but that's because the Malevolent Cloak doesn't have any. Your outgoing healing can get really high. If you use 2 8% outgoing square jewels and the Emerald Cayman Scepter, it would actually be 220% outgoing, since it's 3% more than the Sword of Kings. Finally, here's the Power Pip Chance. It would be 99% if you used an accuracy triangle jewel instead. So there you have it, a completely free-to-play healing set. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video helpful. In the description down below, I will add bullet points of all the gear I mentioned so you can use that for quick reference.